Hey, Star Wars fans, welcome to another edition of Rule the Galaxy, the best Star Wars podcast, maybe ever, if I can be so bold as to say that myself. My name is Nick Shesky. I am not Joe Molinaro, and some of you are about to log off, but don't log off yet because even though Joe is great, we are back with another edition of the Clone Wars Chronicles, your ongoing half-baked small take of a show that came out a while ago, but man, is still near and dear to our hearts. We got a lot of Clone Wars we're going to talk about. It's really awesome. But I am also joined in the co-pilot seat by none other than my good friend, Mr. Sam Caldwell. Sam, how the heck are you?
Nick, I am doing great. We're back.
Golly.
I listen every week, and it's like I feel like I never left. And I'm like, oh yeah, we haven't done a show in 3 months, maybe. But it's good to be back. I'm glad to avoid watching the Bears for a little bit, which will be great for my mental health. And then I'm glad to be back on the show. We start up the school year. I teach biology. Football season's over. And so my about 50, 60 hours a week are back from my non-paying job that I get to do. So excited to be back. Excited
that now you fill with Funko Pop behind you.
Right. And now I fill with Star Wars merchandise that is always gets a couple eyebrow raises and eye rolls from my wonderful wife. But just glad to be. I'm gonna steal this from somebody else on the show. I don't remember but I'm just glad to talk the wars.
Oh, Brent Dykman.
I was gonna say, is that a Brent Dykman? Yeah, there we go.
That is.
I'm just here to talk the wars.
We're here to talk the wars, and you said it a second ago. It feels like it's been forever. We've had quite a bit of life happen. Not that anybody that listens to the podcast really cares about what happens in our personal life, but man, between jobs, between football, between sickness, between family, between growing families, dude, all kinds of stuff in the works. And to everybody who listened to the Clone Wars Chronicles up to this point as like the little offshoot of Rule the Galaxy, we apologize that it's taken so long. Man, I know some of you have been sitting on the edge of your seats waiting for I'm kidding, nobody's been waiting for this, but if you were waiting for, you said, what happened? Did Nick and Sam fall off a cliff? Thank you for bearing with us as we get there. And big thank you to Joe Molinaro for enduring with us. And I think I said 2 months ago on the podcast, like, we got another one coming this week, and then life happened and got in the way and didn't happen. So Joe, thank you for your
patience. Was only 1 month ago.
Oh, I'm glad you remember. 1 month ago feels like a freaking blur, man. Like I have no clue what's going on and where we're at. And anyway, though, lots of great Star Wars to talk about tonight. And Sam and I, as we were talking about, man, what arcs we want to do. The last arc, Sam, I believe that we did was the Malevolence arc.
Malevolence. We didn't do one after that?
No, I think it was.
No, you're right. That was the last one we did.
Which is tragic, which means that we've only done 2. We've done 1 standalone episode and we've done the Malevolence arc, and it just took so long to get back.
Season 1 is a little barren.
Yeah, you can definitely tell. And maybe this is just a comment on Clone Wars as a whole. Like when you watch season 7 of Clone Wars, the graphics, the look of everything, like it is visually stunning. It pulls you in. Season 1, it kind of feels like we don't know if this is going to work, so let's put some money into it. Maybe we self-finance it and kind of make that work. Did you feel that way watching this season?
It did. Even watching this last, and it's not the last arc of the season. I think there's one episode at the end that like leads into season 2. But even watching this last episode, I was amazed. I don't know if it's because the last thing I watched is Bad Batch. Ever since Star Wars Visions came out, I've been watching a little bit more anime than maybe would have had before. And so like after watching all these crisp animations in like 2D, going back to season 1 of Clone Wars here, I was like, yeah, it grew.
Yeah, it did. They really came into their own later. And the arc that we decided and landed on was actually the Ryloth arc. And Sam, you had texted me originally and said, hey, we should do the Ryloth arc. Was there any reasoning in your mind, other than the fact that it's awesome, and any reasoning as to like, hey, the next one we should do is this one?
Well, I think that this arc's really good because it kind of encapsulates like the Clone Wars. Like it's
Right.
a 3-episode arc. It takes like your main characters, Anakin, Ahsoka, gives them their own story, but it also like opens up the galaxy a little bit. Like, you know, if this was 2008 and you were watching this might be like an insignificant planet with some insignificant characters, but it really kind of leads to some really big Star Wars moments throughout. And then it just, again, kind of encapsulates that, like, that Clone Wars part, right? There's new clones. Each of them kind of has their own personality, how they're interacting like on the battlefield, and like it feels like you're in a war type episode. So it kind of encapsulates the whole show a little bit, which is good for this early season episode arc.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's interesting watching back at season 1, I feel like they were kind of not finding their way, but they were kind of finding their way as far as like, you know, I feel like it happened when we watched later seasons of the Clone Wars too, where like you would go through lulls, right? Where you would have like really great arc, and then you'd have like a 3 arc, not throwaway, but like when you have like the Bombad Jedi, you know, like Jar Jar ones, you're like, this is
That
good.
was the last one we did.
Did we do
New
that one?
Gunray arc.
Golly, we did the new Gunray arc. Okay, so I don't feel as bad. We've gotten a couple of these in. I still feel pretty bad, but we gotten some of those in, and but like that one felt like a little throwaway, a little like we're going towards a younger audience. I really like this Ryloth arc, and the more we talk about it, in particular because of where it takes you and what it's setting up further down the road. And one of the things that we'll talk about throughout this is that the Star Wars that we've gotten from the Filoniverse, man, really kind of gets its origins in some of this season. The amount of spoilers that you see, or not spoilers, like Easter eggs that you see throughout this arc that show up later in like The Mandalorian or in the Bad Batch. Like it's shocking watching some of this stuff now in hindsight, going like, man, this was like 2008 when this came out, and they already had, you know, the blurgs from The Mandalorian like ready to go. And like when we watched it, we're like, blurgs, that's cool. I've never seen those before. Yes, you have, in 2008, way back in the early, really poorly animated, you know, season 1 of Clone Wars. So I wonder, Sam, maybe you tee us up and just give us the 3-episode arc for those who, I'm assuming if you're listening to a Star Wars podcast, you might know what Ryloth is, where Ryloth's at, like the idea. Just give us a brief overview of, you know, the arc. You mentioned the different people that we're hitting. You go for it.
Yeah, so it's a like you said, 3-episode arc. And the first one very much is focused more. It almost feels like a 1+2. Like 1 feels very much like an Ahsoka episode, like with Anakin, and like it could have just been a standalone. And then the second 2 are more about like actually liberating Ryloth and like the Republic's presence there, separatists and the battle and everything. So in the first one, that, you know, they're going to, Ryloth has been taken over by the separatists, and so they need to break this blockade in order to get there. And so the whatever the Neimoidian who's in charge of the blockade is randomly just very good at tactics and knows, oh, it's General Skywalker, here's what they're gonna do. And so Ahsoka gets her own command of fighters, and they go out, and she's like uber confident and disobeys orders. Hey, we can make it. Kind of is like, well, Anakin does this, I can do it. We're gonna go. They get pulled back, and all of her troops die. Classic Clone Wars of like, hey, 12-year-olds, here's some casualties of war. Go suffer with that trauma for the rest of your life.
You know what makes for great primetime Cartoon Network? Useless slaughter of clones that you get like nicknames of 12 seconds before they die.
Yep, absolutely. I wish I could remember one of their names. I feel the first one I watched like a couple weeks ago. I watched the last 2 last night, but this first one I watched a while ago. So forgive me if I get some plot points wrong.
No, I think you're good. Well, maybe we stop on that one, Sam, because I do think what we're gonna do is just talk high points throughout some of these. If you really want in depth, we'd say, hey, go watch it. It's episode 19, 20, 21 of the last season, or the first season of the Clone Wars. And what I love in particular about this 3-episode arc, Sam, and we'll hone in on this first one, is that you get different characters throughout the Clone Wars in the same plot but each episode like hones in on a different group of characters. So that first one you're talking about of Anakin and Ahsoka, I feel like we get more in depth here on their relationship, but also you start to see that the way I wrote it in my notes is like you see Ahsoka become like she grows up a little bit in this episode from just this like, well, we can go do this and we got to complete the mission and make it happen, to you see her, you know, love for the clones and kind of her ability to put their lives before the mission come into fruition a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. So like, I mean, you know, we've talked, you guys have talked on the show, and I'm sure that we'll talk about it as we go along, of just like the exponential character growth of her character. But this is a great stepping stone that you can see from just like totally brash and like I can do this to like thoughtful confidence that she brings to all of her situations.
Which is interesting too, like watching, it's been so funny watching back season 1 of this, now knowing what we know, like watching from the end of season 7, where she is maybe one of the greatest characters in this whole Clone Wars. Like everybody thinks it's about Anakin and Obi-Wan. It's about Ahsoka, like the entire, you know, Clone Wars show, right? In like her vantage point. And I love the end season 7 with her vantage point of the events that are going on, pays it off all the way to the Mandalorian, where, you know, Rosario Dawson now shows up and you see this fully mature, you know, Ahsoka, who's this gray Jedi. It's funny watching back episode 1 or season 1 and remembering how annoyed I was with Ahsoka and going like, this is why I was annoyed. Like, this is what, like, everything to the costume design, which changes later down the road. Like, she's still very like middle schooly,
very girlish,
very, very little girlish middle school. And I had this thought, and I'm curious what you think, like, because as we're watching this episode, this whole first episode is all about tactics. Like, it's like a chess game in space, to the point of like, you know, I'll say spoiler alert, but if you haven't seen it yet, it came out in 2008, so I'm sorry about you. but literally, like, crashing empty ships into blockades and blowing stuff, you know, like all this like tactical stuff. And my question to you, Sam, is this: the Jedi, right? Guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy, not necessarily like wartime generals. And so, unless I've missed something, how do we go from like peacetime war generals to now we're like these expert tacticians that know, like, Ahsoka's like 13 years old, and it's like, here, you want command of an entire fleet of grown clone men that you can like fly around and go do stuff with? Like, explain that to me.
It adds a little validity to Sheev's convincing of the public that the Jedi were bad, right? That they could just,
interesting, right?
They weren't actually just like peacetime people. It's like, well, they were perfectly content to.
Oh shoot! If we have to, we'll
if
go.
We have to, oh no! Yeah, that's a good question there. Now, one might say maybe they're just naturally inclined to strategic things, because if you are a Jedi and you need to be, you know, solve things in creative ways, that you're actually pretty good at strategy. But yeah, they put a lot of faith in small children in this show. Maybe a little bit too much. I will say one of the things I like, so you know, that you already had mentioned it, right? So they go back, they regroup, and so I was like, no, I can't. And Anakin does a great move, and this is one of those things that, like, as a teacher and a coach, like I love this. Maybe you can relate as a youth pastor. Like, he just is like, this person needs to be equipped, and just like, you can do it, and I'm going to put them in a situation where, like, if you don't, we're screwed. And he's like, here's the plan. I'm out, and if you don't save me, I'm dead.
I'm gonna get jettisoned off in an escape pod, float around in space, and just hope for the best.
And you better come rescue me, otherwise I'm probably gonna die. So he just goes off and does this, and she rises to the occasion, right? Comes and does it at the right moment, and they're able to save him and destroy the droid blockade and punch their way through to Ryloth. But I think that's a good moment too, because the movies, we've talked about this too, the movies don't give you a great view of Anakin. You know, we see him in Attack of the Clones. Woof. You know,
I like that movie. I like that movie.
And hey,
and I'll go to my grave in my top 5 favorite.
You love Attack of the Clones. I'm a little, you know, I can't get past the script. But it's almost because, like, the teenage angst is almost too much for me.
Yeah.
But you don't, and all of a sudden you're in episode 3 and it's like, oh, I'm 22 and I'm this Jedi master who like can do all this stuff. Whereas like this actually shows you like, oh, look at you like growing and like doing these things. So I thought that was a good moment.
I'm with you. One of my last thoughts on this episode in particular, we can continue to move on because there's more. I feel like there's more meat in the second and the third one. I thought. I guess what I'm curious in is like, there's this line that Obi-Wan says at the end, like they blow up the blockade, and really they blow up the blockade by sacrificing a capital ship. Like they just go like, hey, you know what? We got this capital ship. We're gonna fly it straight into the Nemoidian cruiser, blow the thing up. They'll never see it coming, right? Like it's gonna be awesome. And Obi-Wan shows up and they're missing a ship, and he just goes, "Do I even want to know?" or something to that effect. And they're like, "Don't worry about it. Like it's fine." I understand that we're dealing and living in a fake universe that's not real, as much as it pains me to say that. However, the frugal, stingy side of Nick sees this, and I go, hang on a second. Are there no repercussions for just like, I flew the ship I was entrusted with into the side of an enemy ship and blew it up? And guess what? We got the supplies there, but we also just torpedoed like a $20 trillion, whatever.
Yeah. Managerial Nick has no place in the hierarchy of the Grand Army of the Republic. Let's just put it that way. You would not fare well.
I would not be just sacrificing spaceships that can fly around and could come back and help us in every time. So I thought it was an interesting, like we value these people, which is a cool comparison actually, and one that I want to talk about when we get into the other two, of looking at the Separatists. When you read some of the other stuff, like if you read the like Dark Disciple book, one of the most interesting moments in that book is when they show like a vantage point of Count Dooku giving a speech, and the people on the planet that he's giving the speech of just like welcome Count Dooku with open arms, like thank you for liberating us from the Republic, like this is awesome. I like that in this you get a different view of that, where you see the Separatists as like, we don't actually care about any of you, we care more about like imposing and having control and having power. Where you see in the first of this episode, the Jedi kind of have the opposite approach to go like, hey, I'll blow up my ship if it'll end the blockade that's stopping people from getting supplies and from eating, and they're dying. I thought that was an interesting paradox that you see all throughout this entire arc of like, we care enough that like we'll just destroy whatever we got to destroy to make sure that you're free. Free in insert air quotes. But the Separatists are all about, we just want to oppress you. I thought that was interesting.
Really just want to be here to be here.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on that first episode? Because I thought it was really good. I think the second and the third for me kind of paid off more.
I think so too. Yeah. No, I mean, just like I said, I think it's a good stepping stone in the growth of Ahsoka and Anakin, and one that, while obviously the centerpiece of this season, like takes much more precedence, or has a much bigger presence going forward.
Right. So we go from the skies above Ryloth out in outer space, and in the second episode of this arc, we are now down on the planet, and drop ships have landed, led by General Kenobi, voiced by James Arnold Taylor, who I just got to say out loud, James Arnold Taylor, thank you for the gift that you've given us as the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi and all these things. I mean, just one of my favorite vocal performances out of just about anything we do, right up there with D. Bradley Baker in my mind, of just, raw talent, led by Obi-Wan Kenobi, who are now going in and they're helping liberate some of these surrounding villages outside of the capital. Sam, anything you would say to bring us into this arc or into this episode?
No, besides this episode opens with just the classic Star Wars, like, we got 3 ships coming in, and 1 or 2 of them without the main characters just get blown up. We're dropping some drop ships. One of them has Obi-Wan on it, and the rest of them you just watch get picked off by missiles. And it's like the amount of just nameless faces that blow up in this show and these movies. Excellent.
You just know too, like you see the door shut and you're like, man, we've just watched enough Star Wars that these guys just aren't going to make it.
Yeah. And those guys are on there, they're like, Obi-Wan's not on the ship. See you guys.
See you guys. And
Yeah.
I like that this one was they actually titled this one The Innocence of Ryloth. And I really
Hmm.
liked it because I thought it was I thought it was interesting that again, you talk about these mature themes in this kid show, right? Like all throughout this episode, you see this um, this dichotomy of like, well, we're soldiers here to liberate these people, and like that's it. And
Yeah.
we're here to do our job, kind of what you would see from Crosshairs later in Bad Batch, like good soldiers
Yeah.
follow orders, like we just do the bare minimum of what we got to do, and then we get out. And it's paired against this I gotta go back to my notes and find the two clones that we get separated from the rest of the group. um
Waxer and Boyle.
Waxer and Boyle, which sounds like they could be like goons in a Sherlock Holmes movie,
That they
right?
do. Yeah.
Like they took down Waxer and Boyle together, right? But you see, I think Waxer's the one that has like the sympathy towards the Twilight people, and
Mhm.
Boyle's the one that is like, these people are almost like subhuman. What are we doing here? We're on this kind of flea bitten back world, which
Yeah.
I really appreciate that they go to Ryloth. I think just for me, the Twilight people are, I just think it's cool. Like you see Bib Fortuna
Mhm.
in Return of the Jedi, and you're immediately like, I want to know more about you and where you come from and what's going
Yeah.
on. And I love that they just tie in this whole galaxy of stuff. So I set the stage a little bit. Talk more about this episode.
Well, like you said, so they land, they're trying to storm the outer defenses. And I don't think this is the first time, and I should have done more research before this. I'm sorry. It's just a busy day. But, if we get a real good look at the tactical droid in charge, and so like, well, I'm predicting this, I'm predicting that, like, they're
Right.
going to get through our defenses. So Kenobi and Cody and his battalion bust through the outer defenses. They do breach the city, and like you said, so they send off Waxer and Boyle to go look for scout the area. And so they're talking about this abandoned city, and they find this little girl, this little Twilight girl, right? And this episode's got just like, again, going back to what I said before, the great kid show trifecta of war crimes as the separatists are using human shields to defend their base.
Yeah.
Casual casualties of war, and just letting people just die on the fly and not having a care, unlike some other kid shows. And then just like some vague racism, as they call them the tailheads. I don't remember which one. We should look this up when you talk next. I'll look up who's calling them the tailheads, but just casually throwing those things in there. But it is interesting and honestly adds a little layer of realism, right? Like, you could see two soldiers in the real world being in a foreign land and like having similar conversations. So they find this girl, they don't know, like one of them's sympathetic, the other one's not so much. She follows them, but she ends up leading them to safety from these gigantic creatures that the droids send out to attack the clones.
Carnivorous.
In the clones. What are they?
They're carnivorous, like they like they don't eat droids, but they'll eat
no. And have you read oh gosh, what is it? Is it Dark Lords of the Sith, where Palpatine and Vader land on Ryloth?
Yep.
I think these are the creatures that like they talk about a lot in that book that just like are,
I think you're right,
ruthlessly hunting me, which is also just a great callback to this episode. So so they're led to safety. These creatures attack, and they thin out the numbers quite a bit, but Obi-Wan Kenobi through ingenuity, and the Force, that will lead them, corner them, and they trap them and get away. And so through that, though, eventually they're reunited with Waxer, Boyle, and this girl who keeps, I think her name Nina?
I think that sounds about right.
Nira.
I have that somewhere in my. That's it.
Yeah, Nira. Yeah. Who also, by the way, I would be remiss to
Is
say
it Numa?
Or maybe her name's Numa.
I think it's Numa. I got it right here in front of me. Yeah. Otherwise,
Nira, she calls them Nira.
That's it. She calls them.
Which we'll talk about later. But Numa, fun fact, makes an appearance twice in Star Wars Rebels.
Interesting.
With, Cham Syndulla, who we'll talk about later.
Okay. You know what, Sam? Before we move all the way on, you said something there, and it didn't trigger with me until now. but you said it added a layer of realism to this. And you know what this episode reminds me of? It almost reminds me of like watching like Platoon or like Apocalypse Now, or like almost this like Vietnam era. We go over and you have all these people on all different ends of the spectrum, almost morally. Like you look at Boyle, and Boyle's like, leave her. Like, we're not taking this girl with us. Like, I'm not risking my neck for a tailhead, like you said. Like I'm not. And then you have Waxer, who's like, oh, like this is what we've been sent here to do, to like take care of these people. And what I thought was interesting, like again, they do a good job of keeping it like a kid show, but it does just show you kind of the underside of the clones and what they're sent there to do. And to me, it felt very much like when you read about these atrocious like war crimes, and you read about stuff that happened in Vietnam, and soldiers taking advantage of people, basically out of this idea of like, we're superior to you. I think it's interesting, like when you watch the documentaries, and when Lucas was creating Star Wars, it came out of this Vietnam era of the big bad galactic empire was actually the US, right? And the band of rebels was this group that's coming to overthrow, that can fight back, that can win against this oppressive government that's coming around. So I thought it was interesting that you said that, because I don't think it even clicked with me yet, but the idea of, that's so right. It's it felt like very wartime, like you're seeing as a little kid, like the basic fundamentals of like wartime regimes, like going against each other. And I don't know if you caught this. I saw it, and again, all throughout these episodes, you see the Filoniverse Easter eggs that would come back later. The same when they go back to her house and they get in there, and it's like, oh, this is where your parents were killed, and they're like guessing, like, man, I think this is where her parents were killed, and all stuff. They hand her a little doll, and you see that doll, that same sort of style of doll, all throughout the rest of Clone Wars. You see it all throughout Bad Batch. That's what Omega has. Back in the back of her thing. You see it in Rebels. It's actually what Ezra has at some point. And I just think it's interesting, like, again, all these kind of outer rim worlds, we all have some sort of similar culture, and the Barbie looks different, but everybody's got a Barbie. You know what I'm saying? Like,
got one.
It's kind of different. But yeah, dude, I thought this episode was really good in the fact that it creates some tension around, well, what are we here to do? Are we here to free these people, or save these people, or what? Yeah, I thought it was interesting.
No, I think that's a good point. Yeah, and like you're right, because I'm almost thinking about like how it ends, and it's almost like it's inconsequential, because it's more about like you said, the just like bigger picture of it, and the deeper, more nuanced issues of war and being there than it is about like they eventually go through the tunnels and make it. Hooray! Right. They save they take out the guns, and the ships can come down or whatever. So
right.
That's a good point.
Which what I like about this arc, right? You start up in space, and then you come down to this little like remote village that they're liberating, and then if we don't have anything else on this one, I think we move right into the third one, which is, I think, of the three, I felt like it was the most, like, it kept my attention the most, and it was we had the Innocence of Ryloth, and
Victory on Ryloth,
Liberty on Ryloth. This is where now we've moved from Anakin and Ahsoka, we've moved to Obi-Wan and the clones, and now we've got Mace Windu who comes in, which, I'll be honest with you, one of my favorite parts of the Gendry Tartakovsky 2003 Clone Wars is the Mace Windu, where he's like punching all those droids. Yeah, like hand-to-hand combat, leaping throughout. And so you see some of this throughout, not the punching, but you just see like great acrobatic feats by Mace Windu, which is just awesome. And I thought it was good. But now we are liberating the actual capital city, which, do you remember the capital city name? Why do I not remember this? I gotta look that up while we look into it. But essentially the idea is Mace Windu says, hey, we are coming in, and we're going to take over the capital city. Once we get the capital city, we'll now have control of the entire planet. And before we get into the Mace Windu actually liberating, what I think is so interesting is you see Mace as a pragmatist that just goes like, we'll do whatever we got to do to free these people, similar to what we've been talking about already. Do whatever we got to do to free these people. They're talking with Chancellor Palpatine, which again, I want to come all the way back full circle for something we talked about on one of the previous episodes.
So much time.
Who runs this guy's calendar? Like, how do you have time across time and space to just casually jump on a call with Mace Windu and be like, give me an update on what's going on in Ryloth?
Full royal garb, just like, yeah, I'm here. What's up?
I just so happened to be with the Prime Minister of Ryloth here, and we're wondering, how's it going on our planet? Like, what are we?
Lessu, Lessu.
That's it. That's the name of it. Yeah. So you see right away, Mace Windu goes, I will get in there. We're going to take the city, do what needs to be done. It's very Samuel L. Jackson feel, even though he's not voicing him, kind of this, like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get in there and make it happen. And what I thought was interesting, which I don't remember seeing a ton of this in the season up to this point, but is like the political posturing that you see between Cham Syndulla and Onfrita.
Onfrita, that's his name. Yep.
Or Onfrita is the elected official. Cham Syndulla, who we would later come to find out and really be connected with, runs a little militia. And there's beef between the two of them, so much so that they can't even, like, they're saying, hey, let's find different solutions of liberating it. Don't go with the rebels.
Onfrita is like, I'd rather do something else than contact him. He can't be trusted.
Yeah, right.
Which like, his character design says like, you were mayor of Chicago one time. Like, I don't think you could be trusted, buddy. Like, there's a lot of shit you got going on there.
Right. Which is where we get introduced to Cham Syndulla, which Sam talked to us about Cham Syndulla, because I don't know if we knew it at the time. We definitely didn't know it at the time because I was just a middle schooler and I didn't know nothing about nothing. But that Cham Syndulla would be such a huge, part of the Star Wars saga moving on.
Well, so I, unlike you, first of all, I can't even imagine if I had watched this in middle school, it wouldn't have mattered to me, right? I would have just been like, oh, there's another dude who's a character on my show.
Hit something with a lightsaber.
Yeah. Where's the lightsaber? Where's Luke? Give me Luke. But even coming to this a couple years ago, so I'm around, but I'm pretty unplugged from like the spoiler internet. Like, I'm around social media enough, I guess. I have I can go places, but like, I don't go every day with the risk of being spoiled from most things. And so I watched this and I had no idea who Cham Syndulla was. And it wasn't until I watched Rebels when I was like, Syndulla. Well, that's that name's familiar. But even this last, what was it? When did Bad Batch end? Was that in the spring, summer?
Yeah.
He's still there. He is a freedom fighter for Ryloth. I should have come up with a good comparison of him if I had really thought ahead, but he's
kind of like a William Wallace, like in a way, right?
Yeah,
like
there you go.
He's like, we're the only thing I care about, whether we live or we die, is can we get our people free? And I'm with you, Sam. I remember, dude, I went back and I watched all of Rebels and it didn't even click for me until season 7 of Clone Wars was coming out. And I went back through and I watched it all over again. And I went, wait a minute. I know that last name. Like, I know. And then it like clicked and you're like, wait, what is happening? Like, this is, oh, no. It wasn't that. You know what it was? It was in Rebels, because he shows up again in Rebels.
He does.
Because they go back to Ryloth.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. And he's like full on crazy old. Yeah. Not like Saw Gerrera crazy, but like kind of,
pretty
like,
close.
I'll do anything to free Ryloth. Sort of guy. I mean, he is, and they allude to it in Rebels a lot too. I know this is, we're not talking about Rebels, but because you see, this is the earliest you see him, right? It's just real early on, like, I care about my people. You don't see his family, right? They don't show like his wife. They don't show Hera at all. But it's like, I care about my people more than anything else, right? I want Ryloth to be free. And he has a great conversation with Mace Windu. Mace, classic Jedi, is like, well, we're the Republic. We're the good guys.
Just trust us.
we're gonna help you out. Trust us, and we'll free you. And it's like,
And we won't need any presence around.
Right. And it's like, and he's like, so you're gonna leave troops? He's like, well, we gotta leave troops a little bit just to keep the peace. And Cham Syndulla, this is the kind of guy he is. He says to Mace Windu, he's like, well, you say a little bit of time, but how long until I'm fighting you then, Master Jedi?
Come on.
And he just is like, he is a no holds back. Like, I am not having people in my land. Like, I want Ryloth to be free. Which tragically, if you've kept up with Star Wars over time, we really don't ever see.
Mm-hmm.
That's my take on Cham Syndulla.
Which I think, Sam, watching Bad Batch now and seeing that whole arc that they do with like the young Hera, and you see Cham and his wife, and you see just the atrocities of the Empire, like essentially killing on Frita, setting up that Cham killed him, kind of like all this stuff. Like, in my mind, it just sweetens this arc where you're right. Like, you are seeing the unraveling of Cham Syndulla, all throughout this. Like, in this episode, in this arc, he's actually like very level-headed. Like, he's just riding around on blurgs, which, another spoiler again, or not spoiler, Easter egg from the Mandalorian when they're riding around on blurgs. But you see the unraveling happen throughout Cham, and I have such a deeper appreciation for what they were doing all the way back in 2008, to then come back in 2021 and pay that story off, and to go, hey, it'd be really cool is if we came full circle and we showed, like, they were laying the groundwork, like it was going in the water so many years before, to get to 2021 where they would show this to us, and we would be awed that we got to see Hera in like young Chopper, but then see like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what he was talking about, of like, it's only a matter of time till I'm fighting the very people that have come to liberate me and kind of set us up and be free. And so, what is the line that kept popping to mind was, I can't remember if it's Force Awakens. Yeah, I think it was Force Awakens, where Maz Kanata, right, says like, I've seen many people come and go. It was, I've seen the Republic, and I've seen, the Empire, and I've seen the Sith and the Jedi, and like all these, it's all about power, right? And so for me, I thought this was a cool arc in light of what we just came out of. And it only just shows, again, man, the writing of this, like, it's like they're playing chess while everybody's playing checkers.
Yeah.
Just stunning.
It's a good one. Can we talk about my favorite audio-visual part, maybe
Please.
of the whole
Please.
season? Probably not of the whole show, but it's probably of the whole season. So we get introduced. We know all the stuff in there. Their plan is to storm the Capitol, which they do. And we've already talked about Wat Tambor is the one who's in charge, and he's very arrogant about his success. And the tactical droid eventually abandons him and flies away. But so they devise this plan, right? Mace Windu and a couple clones get in a droid transport to go across the. First of all, we're in a galaxy far, far away with almost limitless technology, and this one plasma bridge is the only way in or out of this city.
It's a little concerning. Yeah.
Is it actually the only way in or out? Huh?
You could just fly.
You could just fly. You could just force push people over the thing. I mean, there's a million things you can do. But anyway, so they get halfway across the bridge. This is my other favorite part, is the droids have scanners in their hands to scan for human beings.
Like metal detectors.
But so they detect the humans. Mace Windu gets out, kills them. In the place, like, all right, shut down the bridge. They shut down the bridge. You see it flicker and go, and the sound almost goes completely off. It like goes kind of like mute, and all you can kind of hear is like wind rushing. And Mace Windu, like, just kind of like all in a flash, like throws the two clones up. He's like stepping, jumps, catches one of the things. He like looks the droid in the eye, turns him into the other one, blows up, jumps again. And it's all like silent during the whole thing. But it's just like, man, that dude's badass. That's
so true. It's so true. I mean, it's
true. So good.
It's kind of one of those moments where like it sucks you in. Like if you watch Kill Bill, where like
Yeah.
it shifts to like black and white. Like, and
Yes.
it's like one of those things,
Yes.
like it like sucks you right in. Cause I watched it back too. And that moment is so like, oh, wait, that's awesome. Like
Yeah.
it's a
Like
very
your
cool,
parents could have been walking by and they would have been like, what is happening? Right. It like
yeah,
brings you, yes, it just brings you in. And it's really cool. That's
exactly.
a great one. Big fan.
To comment on something you said, you talked about the droids in particular scanning. I thought one of my favorite lines of this whole, and it's like, it's just stupid humor, but maybe because I'm a dad now, I like really think it's funny. But where they're like, uh, it happens just before the bridge, but the droids come up on the top of the hill where Cham has like blown up all these other droids. And they're like, oh, look, it's the head of BB, whatever, kind of thing. And he's like, oh, yeah, no wonder he got blown up. He wasn't an independent thinker like us. And they all go, Roger, 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 Roger. Which I thought it was so good.
Roger,
And
Roger, Roger. Yeah.
and they're paving, some of the sentiment for what you would see in episode 3. I remember being, in middle school watching Revenge of the Sith, and when Obi-Wan and Anakin crash in the Confederacy hangar and they get out and they just start destroying droids, and like then they pan over. It's like a throwaway laugh, but the droids are going like, oh, like like, and I remember being like, what? Like they're droids. Like why would, like, they don't have personality, they can't feel it, because the only thing that we had seen up to that point was battle droids on Naboo that like you blow up the one big ship and they're done. In Attack of the Clones, where they're just fighting and you don't see any like individuality, any purpose. And I think it's cool that they use Clone Wars to almost retcon some of this stuff and go like, hey, we learned from our mistake of the one ship and now they're all independently programmed. And like it's such a throwaway little thing, but I think it's so
right.
fun.
But they bring it back a couple times.
They do.
Man, after the Naboo crisis, like we had to go independent.
After that little slave boy blew everything up for us.
Yes.
And which I thought was cool. And then they liberate Ryloth. Cham comes in and does his whole line of, Wat Tambor goes, what are the terms of surrender? And he goes, unconditional, which I thought was so cool. And so Cham of just like, to your point you talked about earlier, like the only thing we're going to accept is like you to give up completely and to leave. Like there's no middle ground here. Yeah. This is our land. Get in or get out.
Yeah.
Which I thought was awesome. Sam, overall thoughts, anything that we missed on this arc before we put this thing to bed?
Anything that we missed. I'm sure there's something that we missed. Like I said before, I think this is just a great encapsulation of the show. Kind of has just little bits from each one. There are other arcs that do the little bits better, but this is one of the best ones that brings all of them together, and just makes me excited to kind of go back to talking about it more often with you. Just being able to kind of just, I like evaluating it through a critical lens, but also just from a lens of enjoyment. I just really loved watching this the other night. I was like, man, this is so great. Like, I've seen this episode 5 times already, and I'm just happy to watch it again because it's actually really good. I don't always enjoy watching Bombay Jedi, but I do enjoy watching these ones. So.
Right. I'm with you, Sam. And why do we do this, right? That Clone Wars, to the people that are sitting here going, man, why would you do, commentary on a show that stopped airing, a year and a half ago? And these episodes came out, a long time ago. Why would you keep doing it? 14 years ago. And in my mind, it's the thing that for you and me, there's like historical and like institutional memory that takes you right back to being, a 13-year-old kid watching Star Wars again, or, 14-year-old kid watching Star Wars. And, it's why you can watch this same episode 5 times and get enjoyment every single time because of what that's come already, but also just enjoying it for what it is. So Sam, I was pumped to watch this arc, and I'm excited for whatever arc we end up doing next. I feel like you said it earlier, season 1, they're kind of finding their way. I took a quick glance and just looked. Yeah, look, there it is. And you have the beautiful Blu-ray edition for all of our YouTube watchers that are watching right now. Sam's a big Blu-ray guy.
Big Blu-ray. Love my physical media. The day the cloud crashes is the day that Sam Caldwell will laugh at the masses for
the day that the machines rise up and revolt and turn off Disney Plus. I'm going to be driving to Illinois to watch.
I mean, unless we want to do the Cad Bane arc, I think landing at Point Rain in the second Battle of Geonosis is coming up next.
I'm telling you, we only get better from here as the episodes go. Season 1, so many good things, laid such a great groundwork. Season 2 and on, in my mind, just continues to go up and to the right. So Sam, thank you so much for jumping on tonight. Seriously, I know it's been a long week. I know we've been talking about doing this show forever. It's only Monday, man. It feels so good to get this done and to, be able to talk about this. Thank you to everyone that stuck around and listened this long and listened to the ramblings of two, guys that just love Star Wars and love listening to it. Thank you to everyone who listens regularly to Rule the Galaxy. Literally so much fun getting to do this all the time. If you don't follow us on Twitter already, follow us on Twitter at RuletheGalaxySW. We're also, Sam, on Facebook. So if you're not on Facebook, get your mom to go follow us at Rule the Galaxy.
Get your crazy aunt to go follow us.
Get your crazy aunt Barb to go follow us on there. We're also on Facebook. And if you have questions or any sort of feedback and you say, hey, talk about this arc, or if you have an arc in particular that you would say, man, I wish
or an episode,
man, I wish these bozos would talk about this arc in particular. And or if you have any feedback on stuff that we missed out of this one, you can email us at RuletheGalaxySW@gmail.com. Once again, that's RuletheGalaxySW@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. Hit us up on Twitter. Sam, real quick, give everybody your Twitter handle so they can tweet at you.
I'm real easy. I'm at Chopper Base. It's my Rebel Season 3 callback for you. So I'm at just Chopper Base. No caps, no spaces.
I like that.
That's it. Yeah.
Very cool.
I don't post a lot, but I like a lot of Rule the Galaxy stuff. So
you know what? You said it earlier. You're not a spoiler guy. The stuff that I do on Twitter is I just go follow Alfie Molinaro and I just watch what he retweets and he posts. And that's how I stay up to date because he's a spoiler guy and he lives for that kind of stuff. So
loves the spoilers.
You know what? Loves it. Can't get enough of it. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Always fun. We'll have another episode of Rule the Galaxy dropping here really soon. But until then, may the Force be with you.